Hello, David McCoy here, Ochimo Properties Real Estate Matters. Today I'm continuing the series on frequently asked questions for commercial real estate, and I thought today we would talk about what is a phase one. If you've ever been working with maybe renting or probably more likely buying or looking at that, someone may mention, well, it needs to have a phase one done. And if you're not familiar with that is really, it's a common term used having to do with an environmental report. When you're buying property, commercial property, you need to know about the environmental history of that property. This is probably with industrial properties. I would say probably 100% of those need to find out about that. For office properties, I think it would depend upon the office. Some of it would depend upon how old the building is, what kinds of materials were used in it, those kinds of things. But almost any time you buy a commercial property, if you're financing it, the financer is going to want to have an assessment done. And so lots of times they'll have a questionnaire. And that questionnaire gets filled out, and then they'll evaluate that questionnaire to decide whether or not they think they need to have an environmental engineering firm do an assessment. If an environmental engineering firm does an assessment, they come out and they do what is known as a phased one environmental study. So the environmental studies, so it's actually, there are three phases to a study. So the first one, phase one, is when they come out and they do an assessment, they do an inspection, and they just, they make a determination whether or not it appears more study is needed. If it doesn't appear that there is, then usually that's it. They release a report saying that there's no evidence, or they don't see any reason that it can't, that there's any problems there, and usually everything moves forward from there. Now, it's also possible that they can do the assessment and come back and say, well, we think that there is reason to investigate further. And so if that's the case, then they move to what is known as a phase two. In a phase two, they do more extensive testing. And based upon that testing, they may do like, sometimes they'll put like little wells. They'll drill little cores around in the outside of the building, or maybe on the inside of the building. And they will be collecting water from there and testing that, or runoff from there and testing that to see whether or not it appears that there's a problem. And so they will be testing that and just sort of see. And so then based upon the phase two, if they're finding problems with a phase two, then they might go to a phase three. So a phase three is a remediation plan. And with a phase three, you put together a plan on how you're going to take care of these environmental issues, and you do frequent monitoring of those. And then you have to continue that until that remediation has been taken care of. And once it's been taken care of, to kind of get it off the list, you have to go to the state and ask the state to issue a letter. The letter is often called an NFA, which stands for no further action. So once you reach the point where it appears that everything is taken care of, you get that from the state, and then that indicates that there was an environmental problem, but it has been mediated and there's no other issues. So that's what phase one and two and three mean. These are important when you're buying commercial real estate. As I said, probably 100% of the industrial buildings, I mean, by their nature, lots of times there's things going on there. There may be solvents or motor oil or all kinds of things in use in there, and so and perhaps even more dangerous materials in use in there, and so you do need to make sure that that's okay. With an office building, if it's a newer office building, it might be just fine, but if it's an older office building or an old school or something that's maybe 50 or 100 years old, it can have asbestos, it can have other things in it, and those are things that you maybe need to know. You may need to do some things. So there is a risk associated with that. If you buy a property that has these kinds of problems, it is possible that you could be required to clean it up. So you need to know that it's a risk on the property, which is why financiers want to know about it up front. If there is a problem, many times they don't want to finance the property. And so typically you would put a contingency in your contract for environmental assessment to make sure that that doesn't become a problem. It is possible, and maybe other circumstances too, but with environmental issues in particular, it's possible to have real estate that has a negative value. What that means would be that the property, if you were to buy it, the cost to clean it up may exceed the market value of that property. So it is possible to have a negative value on a real estate property. So the environmental, it can be a very big deal. It can be a very important deal, and it's one that you have to take into consideration. And so this would typically be something that would come up when you're buying a property. It could come up if you're leasing. More than likely it would happen in a purchase contract more so than a lease. But anyway, so that's what the term phase one means. When you hear someone say that, you now know that, hey, if someone says, I think we need a phase one on that, what they're talking about is an environmental study to kind of gauge the risk for that particular property. So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think the takeaway is sort of obvious there. If you have more questions about it though, please feel free to leave a comment or shoot me an email. I will be glad to talk with you more about that. If you have comments about it, please leave a comment below. If you like this video, I hope you will click like. If you think someone would benefit from this video, I hope you will hit share. And if you want to keep getting these videos and see them as they come along, please hit subscribe. So thanks so much for watching today. I hope you have a terrific day, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.